Hi, everybody. This is going to be for chapters 19 and 20. Kind of doing 2 videos in 1 week because next week I'm actually going down to Galveston to do the Texas Theater Association convention for theater teachers in the state of Texas. And I'm teaching some workshops, so I'm going to be kind of busy next week. So I wanted to get this video out of the way, so I'm doing 2 at one time. So this week was about chapter 19 and 20. 19 is about rhythm, tempo and pace. And these are really interesting. This was an interesting chapter to talk about. I can really relate to it. I loved his analogy about how a play is like an automobile. I grew up in Detroit, so I'm very familiar with cars. And I love using this actual analogy with my students. Last year, I remember we did a comedy spoof, and we had to really work on the pacing and the tempo of the piece in order to get the comic timing right. And I remember clapping. I remember saying, stop, slow, shift, look, and then clap again and do the chase scene. And so a lot of these tempo things that he talked about, I was like, oh my gosh, I've done these. These are wonderful. One thing he did talk about, which I absolutely loved because I was like, is the French scene and how useful that is. I actually, when I did my French scene for the Jungle Book, I actually pulled it out and it really helped me look at the blocking of some of these things, especially because there's a whole scene of monkeys that come in and they're chasing the monkeys. And so I've got to know who's exiting there and who's exiting here and who comes back in. And so the French scene actually truly helped me do that blocking. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll work on the pacing of that and the rhythm of it. One thing I did like that he talked about is that pace is not speed, which I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. It isn't necessarily the speed. It's a reminder of like variation of the speech and the movement, using pauses here and there, using quick dialogue, using a silence. Those are actually help with the pacing of what you're doing. And I like that fact that he talked about that. In chapter 20, I want to say thank you for chapter 20 because there are so many issues I think we all have as directors, and like, how do you solve those issues? What do you do? And he brought some really key ones to the surface for us to look at, and not only just what they are, but he gave us solutions. The one about, what did he talk about? The multi-steps that he gave with repeat actors with action. And he says, here, do this and this and this, and go step by step by step. Man, that is so helpful. You have to do that with young actors. Almost have to like tell them exactly where to move and how to step. Because sometimes I feel like they don't know what to do with their bodies. They're just emerging as human beings as it is. The gestures are awful. I have to say, you need to put your hand here, or you need to move your hand this way. And at first it looks really awkward, but after a while it becomes part of their character and they do it much more naturally. But I think teenagers between 12 and 14 are awkward anyway, so having them try to portray a totally different character, you have to really do a lot of physical work with them. Another thing I love that he mentioned, and I'm still struggling with, and we'll keep going, is making sure that we have goals. I think as directors, if we have these goals clear cut from the beginning and that we assess them after each of those rehearsals, that's great. I know he says to do it like immediately, but it's so hard as a teacher. You're teaching all day long and then you have rehearsal after school. And so my counterpart and I actually get together for like 15, 20 minutes the next day. And we talk about what do we need to accomplish for that rehearsal that evening? What did you see? What did you find? Kind of gives me some decompression time as a director too, to think some things through during the night. And then I'm like, oh, revelation, here's what we need to accomplish. So I think that's very helpful. I think as long as you have a plan and you stick with that plan, it can be successful. The last thing is, I just want to say this has been such a thrilling experience to go through this whole book. It has really opened my eyes as a director. At the same time, I feel as educators, we're educating these teens to do theater, and I kind of think we need to be as forgiving with ourselves as possible and just have the joy that we are letting those kids experience live storytelling on the stage. And no matter what it looks like or feels like or sounds like, it's the experience that we're giving these kids, and we're hopefully making them become very creative and empathetic and much more mindful human beings in the future. So that's kind of my goal as a director. But I want to say thank you, and I really have enjoyed this class. Thank you. Bye-bye.